What's up, everybody? John Delarose here, the leading Hispanic voice in science fiction. It's become kind of an annual tradition for me to analyze the Nebula Awards conference programming for y'all. I think it's kind of fun. We get to watch this stuff, and we get to watch the craziness that SFWA puts into its panels. I just got off of my Peloton, which is a stationary bike device, brand new sort of system. Well, it's not that brand new, but it's a system where it's like they've got online classes, you've got a leaderboard, you get to compete and all that. And I'm talking about this for a reason because one, I think it's good, and I want to encourage everybody to be healthy, get moving, because movement is life. And when you get moving, you drop your weight, you feel better, you get more energy, it produces endorphins for you. It's a good thing. And a lot of, I would say, the science fiction and comic book community really neglects themselves in that regard. We are very sedentary people by nature, and we have to fight that and build better habits so that we can be healthier. And we'll get to why that's important as we scroll down through this Nebula conference, which is going to be a lot of fun. If you've seen these videos before, you will enjoy this. I like to do this with SFWA, and I like to do it with Worldcon, because Worldcon banned me because they literally couldn't even that I was making science fiction books without their permission. And I'd like to do this with Baycon also, because that was the first convention to discriminate against me. All right. These people claim to be open and inclusive. And gosh, I want to get a better picture of this Nebula Award thing. This is very funny. There it is. All right. They claim to be open and inclusive, and you notice that they draw this art, which, I mean, my comic artist could do better art than this in general. But you notice what they mean by inclusive is nose ring, the gauged ears, black lipstick, weird looking eyebrows. It's like a 90s goth child or something like that is what they're trying to promote. And these are mostly aging Gen Xers in charge of this stuff. So their ideal vision of society are kind of those dirty people who used to hang around in the streets of major cities, trying to, quote, express themselves by mutilating their bodies and things like that. And it's just not a healthy thing. And as that look ages, it does not look very well on people. But that's what they like to promote. Of course, they want to promote this as the ideal, instead of something like the Superman or something of a actual vision of man trying to better himself. I'm sorry, of persons trying to better themselves. Don't want to misgender people, right? And that is SFWA's entire goal in life at this point. They don't talk about science fiction much at all. Actually, they did do a little better job this year. I will be completely honest, than I saw last year. Last year had just a whole slew of panels that were just all identity politics based and were entirely just trying to push on these like crazy cat lady agendas and crazy cat zem. Is that the proper pronoun? I don't know. Agendas. And this year they're a little better about it. There is actually some interesting writing stuff, but I noticed that overall, well, I guess I'll save my overall conclusions for the end of this. We get mentorship meetings at the beginning here, Nebula finalist receptions. These are just standard things. It makes sense for the club. So there you go. Crowdfunding for authors. I didn't see anything like this last year, and I've noticed there's a shift in the paneling that actually talks about indie business finally. SFWA is really in dire straits right now because they attack indie authors and have for a long time. The people at the top have tried to keep the establishment publishing gatekeeping going as long as they possibly could, but they keep losing ground year after year after year, because independent publishing allows people much better freedom to write stories that people actually enjoy, rather than writing the social narratives that the New York publishing wants to push upon people. Nobody wants to read those, and so nobody buys those. And that's what's happening across the board. If you look at their annual statistics, every time they talk about it, indie publishing is taking more and more of the market share all the time, led by great people like Craig Martell from 20 Books to 50K, who are pushing new and innovative business processes for authors to be able to get their work out there without middlemen trying to rewrite their books, hold them down, suppress any messaging that doesn't, come from the direct Communist Party, things like that. And so now SFWA's kind of getting their acts together a little bit on this front and trying to do something. Now, it's my understanding they're making a big push right now to talk to different authors who have had memberships lapse. And because of that, they are trying to get people back into SFWA who have failed SFWA. And it's interesting. I think they're struggling with their memberships, and they're seeing things decline because normal authors who are not for crazy political agendas are just bowing out of it, especially since there's a new alternative in the IASFA, which is purely author business focused. So interesting that SFWA is leading with this, because it seems like this is something authors should do. I've obviously used crowdfunds quite a bit for my projects and done very successfully with that. They probably should have had me on the panel, but oh well, they can't do that because of politics. All right, Too Adult for Young Adult. This is an interesting panel because I see a lot of young adult things. Yeah, I know you expect me to roast everything. I'm not going to roast everything. If there's good stuff, I'm going to talk about why it's good to talk about this. But I've seen a lot of young adult stuff where it's gone very, very hard into extreme sexuality and things like that, extreme drug use, things that really should not be targeted towards children. And labeling things young adult when it's not appropriate for somebody who's 12, 13, 14, 15, 16 is a big problem in the book industry right now. I'm not sure what their conclusions will be. I'm going to watch these panels and report on them for you so that you don't have to watch them, because I'm sure their conclusions are going to be off the rails, because these are the type of people that paint evil as good and good as evil, etc. But again, this is another panel I should be on, since I write excellent young adult fiction that actually is geared towards 12-year-olds in my First Demon Country series. Interesting. Good topic, though. All right, being creative in 2020, building a community, visibility, and an audience in the virtual world. Super important author business. And this is something that a lot of authors neglect. Again, this is something I'm very good at, and they probably should have me on as a panelist. Small press experience, how to get what you want. This is pretty interesting. And I think small presses are really in trouble at the moment, because there's very little small presses can offer to people at this juncture, unless an author is somebody who's like really struggling, doesn't have the money to buy their own cover, and doesn't have an audience, at which point that person can't really offer much to a small press, because they're just going to be a drain on the small press's resources. So it's a really precarious situation. And that's why I've gone self-publishing at this point. There's just not much anybody can really do for me that I can't do for myself at this point. More mentorship meetings. Finances for the traditionally published novelists. This is going to be a fun panel, and I look forward to roasting this, because I've seen all sorts of talk on Twitter lately about, most people, send to agents, and then, if maybe they can get one book, they might even get 3 books out of their career, and that's it. And I'm just like, haha, it's because all these middlemen are taking your money. And what's left at the end of the day is these people who get these publishing contracts get a, $5,000 advance or whatever. They think they're hot, and then that's all the money they ever see. And so you can't make a career out of being traditionally published unless you are a superstar at this point. And it doesn't make any sense. So very fun. Where and how should you be spending to get paid? It is interesting. And I thought the whole point of having a publisher and all that, and having a network like that, is so that you didn't have to go outlay expenses for things like that. We'll see. Grandmaster Lois McMaster Bujold. Lois is the best writer of our time. I have no problem with this. I will watch this unironically just for fun because I love this woman. She has been wonderful to me personally, and she also writes great books. So, writing a graphic novel proposal. This is interesting. And this is, again, proposals. It's another old guard sort of look at things. So instead of just how to write a graphic novel, which is a little more useful for people because you can just make it, writing a proposal is just going to one of the very small gatekeeping groups of graphic novel publishers and seeing if they'll give you some money to fund it. So, it is what it is. Blades and badasses, disability and swordwork. I don't know. I think about this. Blades and like one thing does not match the others here. And I'm not saying that disabled people like can't use a sword or whatever, but you're going to limit yourself just based on your physicality there. So I don't understand why we would try to, quote, depict realistic sword fight scenes inclusive of all abilities. If we're writing a book and we're writing a fantasy or sci-fi book with sword fighting, I want to present something that's fun and swashbuckling and over the top, actually superhuman in nature, and that's to entertain the readers. If you're trying to realistically downplay things for somebody who's trying to use a sword who's frail or something like that, I mean, there could be a reason for that for the story, but it's interesting to focus on that rather than focus on the fun. Finishing what you didn't start, editors making projects their own. Editors discuss how to work with new to them authors, making adopted projects their own. I don't know. This is old guard editing again. I guess it's important for a new author to kind of get some perspective of how things go. But like once you figure out how to write, I just want an editor to fix my typos, and I don't want them to mess with my vision. So that solves that panel. Managing choice in games and interactive fiction. A panel talk about choice. Oops. What they see in their own other games. I always get these great calls and stuff like that when I record these videos. I'm a busy person. I'm sorry. And they see their own games. It's interesting. This seems like a fan panel, not really a like professionals panel though. What is narrative design in games? Again, this seems like a fan panel concept. Urban development, the evolution of cities in the 21st century and beyond. I don't know. Cities are going to empty out pretty shortly, guys. Good luck with that. These are city people talking, but it's dangerous to live in a city in these times. All right, publishing SFF romance. Pick a seat, not a side. When your book straddles popular genres, how do you determine which ways to publish? That's a great question, and I obviously straddle that line quite a bit with my work because I am a big fan of romantic plots and I am a big fan of science fiction. So you get a lot of both in my books. I tend to go science fiction first, but that's not for everybody. Everybody has to make their own decisions for their own stories. It's a good question. I like that panel. All right. I'm not a lawyer. Contracts for authors. Again, the contracts at this point are so standardized because SFWA dealt with this 20 years ago that almost every publisher has just a standard contract that SFWA built. And so there's not much you can do. There's not much you can really argue with traditional publishers. And if you're going with a small press, you're really dealing with a friend at that point or somebody who you can just talk to. And you should just hammer out what you guys want out of a contract ahead of time. I mean, it's not that everybody makes a big deal of this when they first start writing. And again, this is just like anybody who is a professional who's making professional money like SFWA supposedly is gearing towards should already understand this. So it kind of doesn't make sense. And here we start to get to the fun, guys. You thought we would just have some nice business panels. Not in SFWA's conference. Never. Writing intersectional characters in SSF. In this panel, authors talk about building intersectional characters' experiences into world building. What they mean is forcing degeneracy on readers who don't want to deal with it, and then complaining victim when people don't buy it. That's the name of the game. C is for Conlang. constructed languages. This is a language development thing. I've never been super into languages in my writing and all that. I know people like who have like worked on developing the Klingon language and things like that for Star Trek. And I've met the guy who did the Game of Thrones language for one of the peoples or something like that. And I mean, it's pretty interesting. I just don't ever focus on that in my work personally. Pretty cool. All right. Making video for authors. I love doing this. And it's done a great job, and people need to get better at this. I'm surprised that, like, I talk to a lot of comic book people on my streams, as you can tell, but I'm surprised less just like book authors come on the streams, because this could be something that would build up really, really fast. And if people want to talk books and talk philosophy and stuff like that, you get a lot more out of a novelist typically. No offense, comic people. I'm totally offending you, comic people. It's okay. Than you do comic people, because comic is a much more trite medium than a novel is. So you get a different level typically. So I'd like more people to get involved in this, and I think as a business, you should get good at it. Writing middle grade with this year's Norton Awards finalists. Yeah, okay, cool. This is fun. Deprogramming fat hate in the writer's brain. And this is why I opened talking about how I was exercising. This discussion will present a respectful and safer space for fat and these are professional writers, guys. Fat and non-fat writers. If only there was a word for non-fat that existed. A contrast to fat. What is the opposite of fat? Is it non-fat? I think a word triggers these people right now, and they can't even write the truth. And this is why these people have so much trouble writing decent fiction, because if you cannot present the truth in your art, you will not have art that resonates or is beautiful. It's just how it works. Oh my gosh. To center on identifying personal biases expressed unconsciously through their writing. I mean, I'm going to just take this moment again to say that, like, you know, if you're unhealthily overweight, you should do something about it. You should improve yourself. Work your best to improve yourself. We all live very sedentary lifestyles, as I mentioned, especially in this community. And I started when I was streaming like 2-3 years ago. I weighed 35 pounds more than I do now. I felt sluggish. I was in pain all the time. I got sick all the time. I worked tirelessly and so hard to lose 35 pounds. It's not been super fun, but it involves daily exercise. It involves tracking my calories and making sure I eat the right proportions of protein, fat, and carbohydrates for my lifestyle, which you can get help with that from people online. I'll even try to help you if you're interested. I won't even charge for it. And you can just better yourself. And so the bias is not a bias that's bad, and that's where people always get bad. Like the people who do not believe in truth always say judgments are bad, but objectively, the truth here is that when you are obese, you are at risk of heart disease. You're at higher risk of COVID, like big time. And it's unhealthy for you. That's why doctors make commercials about how you should exercise better and eat right. And that's why they always tell you that. You are statistically harming yourself if you are trying to say it's just totally okay to live that lifestyle. And that's your choice, but don't try to tell everybody else that it's perfectly healthy, because it's not. It's not a good thing. And I encourage everybody to follow what I've done and build yourself an exercise program, build yourself an eating program, and get yourself in better shape. It will just better you as a person. That's all. They should put me on this panel. All right. Spending money to make money as an indie author. It's interesting how they phrase this. And if you notice, they put the traditional publishing, they phrased it. Where'd they go? There's too many panels. All right. Where did it go? Finances. Look how they phrase the difference. And this is how they sneer at indie publishers or writers. Finances for traditionally published author novelist? Of course, it's just finances. This is a neutrally phrased headline, right? And this is how fake news works. Spending money to make money. Where's this? So this is less neutrally phrased, because spending money, because it's saying, hey, you're going to be vain and you're only going to make money because you spent a bunch of money. So this is less neutrally phrased. And instead of managing finances as an indie author would be the way that they phrased it for traditional publishing. And this is why SFWA is failing with the indie authors so much. They sneer at indie authors, and it's a jealousy thing, because indie authors are making so much more on average than traditionally published authors. It just doesn't make any sense at all anymore. They need to get with the times or they're going to die. And this is a minor way of phrasing this like this, but you can tell just by the attitudes all the time, by the way they treat people like 20 books to 50K, the way they treat people like me, the way they treat people like, Brian Niemeyer, who's a great author I've had on the stream, that they just sneer at independent authors. Very sad. Okay. Managing multiple writing projects and more. Oh my gosh, I need to learn how to do this. I've got too many projects. All right. The landscape of audio production for authors. This is a good, useful tool. Again, a lot of this stuff just seems targeted at newbie authors who aren't already in a professional state. At this point, it's like, how do we incrementally make things more profitable? Not how do we do the step A newbie things. If this is a professional guild, everybody should already be a professional already, and they've got pretty stringent qualifications where it's not that easy to qualify. I qualify 100 times over, FYI, but they won't let me in over politics. And the reason is because I call out stuff like this. They don't want to rock the boat, and they don't want to actually change to be a useful organization. Writing comics and graphic novels, process and collaboration. I think I already discussed that about the other panel. Yeah, this is a useful thing. But again, this is a 101 basic newbie author thing. So aren't these supposed to be professionals? Don't know. Who and where I am rooting, writing in identity and place. This seems like a innocuous topic, but when you get the word identity, you're going to then get to the description here. And this is where they go immediately. Diverse group of writers. How much do you want to bet that everybody in this group is a woman or a quote minority or a quote non-gendered cat person, or whatnot? Is there anybody who actually has a diverse point of view in this group? I'm going to bet you the answer is no. There's going to be no libertarians. There's going to be no conservatives. There's going to be no objectivists. There's only going to be a bunch of communists together who want to tell you that you should be, injecting your children with hormones so that they don't know that they're a boy. And that is, that's sad to watch. It's unfortunate. All right. Cover appeal. Indie authors and artists discuss how to find a budget for an artist. Yeah, cover's most important thing. But again, this is basic 101 information. You should already know this as a professional. Second life of stories, reprints, translations, audio, and more. A lot of people do ignore this, and that's interesting. And I've actually been asked to reprint a bunch of stuff by somebody who I will be working with. And I do this in some regard. If you look at my comics, I make a comic and then I make a graphic novel of the comic, or I do it the other way around, depending on the strategy. I put out short stories, then I put them in a collection, then I put them in an audiobook. So this is actually useful stuff. School visits and presentations, brick and mortar tours, virtual visits, and everything in between. I don't know what that has to do with professional writing. All right. Moving the line, advanced imposter syndrome. This is one of those things that you get on those like hashtags, like hashtag am writing or hashtag writing community. And they always talk about imposter syndrome, where they just feel like, I feel like I'm not a real writer. It's like, shut up. It's just whining. I don't know. Most of these people probably are imposters. Let's be honest. These are SFWA. Their requirements mostly target short story writers who have sold 3 short stories, which means you could have made $500 total in your career and be a quote professional author. You're not a professional if you're making $500 in your career. It is what it is. So I don't know. Half the people who are watching this probably are actually imposters. There you go. And they're hacks. Did I mince words? No. Rebounding. How to have a second or third or fourth career in one. That's actually pretty useful for professionals. Good idea. Forming and sustaining a successful writing and critique group. Again, this is like for newbie writers. Established writers should not have a writing or critique group. You should know what you're doing at a certain point. If you're a professional, you probably are not going to get any benefit out of a writing or critique book other than a group, other than a social club that's slowing you down. And that's what SFWA seems to be now, a social club that slows people down. They're not about writers. They're not about advancing careers. They're about chatting and gossiping and destroying people who go against the narrative. And that's it. And that's why people are leaving this organization so much. Brandon Sanderson really is the guy who popularized critique groups and all that, because he did his little critique group and brought it online for a podcast for writing excuses. And then everybody wanted to do exactly what he did because he was pretty successful and rightfully so. He's a good writer. But that whole process of crowdsourcing ideas and all that really just dulls a vision. And I'm not interested in having other people tell me what they would have rather written. I've seen reviews, of different works and things like that. And it's like, I would have done this, which is, somebody went off the rails to a completely different story than I was intending. As an author, you just need to be mindful and intentional of what you're trying to do, and what you're trying to do. If you do something unintentionally and by accident, you're not doing that on a professional level. You are in a state where you're not writing things correctly, and you need to learn. And again, that's great for a first-time author or whatnot, but these are supposed to be professionals in a professional organization. This stuff's useful or useless for people like me. And so is the second version of this. And that's it. That's their whole conference. So it's pared down compared to last year. Of course, they have less events going on because this is all online. So I don't know why they have. You could have more events because you have it online. You really could have different stuff, and you could have really different people. I could come on. I'd happily talk all day and help professionals and help writers learn how to be better writers. But they don't want that. They just want a bunch of people. They want their social club together, and that's the obvious aspect here. You saw the identity politics panels. Those are pointless. I would axe those immediately were in charge of something like this, of course. And they are worthy of mocking because it is a waste of everybody's time as a professional writer to be dealing with this. But they show it in their banner for this. This has nothing to do with science fiction. It has everything to do with like 90s quote edgy people who aren't even edgy anymore. And that's what they're about. They really they think they're, as the establishment, bucking the trends and being punk rock, but they're anything but. The real punk rock is the independent alternatives, the people who are not working for corporate publishing, who are doing it themselves and are saying, screw you to agents, screw you to publishers, and saying, I'm going to write my own vision. I'm going to let people read what they want to read, and we're going to have fun doing it. You can't stop us. And that's the message for today. Hope you enjoyed this. The panel, this is not as bad as last year, guys. Last year was so bad. I could not believe the panels that were involved. And a couple of them are cringy this year. So we've got those, but we'll keep mocking those cringy panels until these guys get a clue, or until they bring me in to lead this organization and change things, which is what they should do. All right, guys, I'll see you soon. Leave a comment down below, hit that like and subscribe button.